If your Toyota's air conditioning is blowing warm air, do not let a shop charge you $800 to $1,200 for a full system overhaul. In most cases, the fix costs less than $20, takes about 30 minutes, and brings your air conditioning back to ice-cold performance. I have seen this exact problem hundreds of times on Toyotas, Camrys, Corollas, RAV4s, Highlanders, you name it. The system is not broken, it is just low. Once you understand why, you will never overpay for an air conditioning repair again. I temperature tested this fix myself, and the results were shocking. Before the recharge, the center dash vents were blowing at 62 degrees Fahrenheit on a 90-degree Fahrenheit day. After the fix, those same vents dropped to 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That is colder than most brand new Toyotas sitting on a dealer lot. So let me explain exactly what is happening inside your system, why shops overcharge for this, and the critical mistakes that destroy Toyota air conditioning compressors every summer. The reason your Toyota's air conditioning slowly loses its cooling power comes down to basic chemistry. Every automotive air conditioning system runs on a refrigerant called R134A, or, on newer models from around 2017 and later, R1234YF. That refrigerant is the lifeblood of the entire system. It cycles between a gas and a liquid as it moves through the compressor, the condenser mounted in front of the radiator, the expansion valve, and the evaporator hidden deep inside the dashboard. When everything is sealed and charged correctly, that cycle pulls heat out of the cabin air and dumps it outside. The result is ice-cold air from every vent. But here's what Toyota owners don't realize. Refrigerant doesn't last forever, even in a perfectly sealed system. Over time, microscopic amounts escape through the rubber O-rings, the hose connections, and the tiny seals around the compressor shaft. Industry data shows that most vehicles lose roughly 10 to 15% of their refrigerant charge over 5 years, just through normal permeation. That's not a leak in the traditional sense. There is no puddle, no hissing sound, no warning light. The system just gradually loses enough refrigerant that the cooling drops off. By the time a Toyota hits 80,000 to 100,000 miles, many systems are low enough to blow noticeably warmer air. Owners assume the compressor is failing or the evaporator is cracked, and that is exactly what some shops want you to believe. In reality, the system just needs refrigerant brought back to spec. The parts are fine, the engineering is fine. The charge is simply low, and topping it off is one of the cheapest fixes in all of car maintenance. Now here's where the money gets wasted. Most shops charge $150 to $250 just for a diagnostic and recharge using the exact same R134A refrigerant that costs $15 to $20 at any auto parts store. The markup is enormous because the service itself is simple. The shop connects a machine, reads the pressure, adds refrigerant until the numbers are right, and hands you a bill. There is nothing wrong with paying a professional when you need one, but this particular job requires no special training, no lifts, and no advanced equipment. A recharge kit with a built-in pressure gauge does the same thing the shop's machine does, just on a smaller scale. Gauge is the key. It tells you exactly how much refrigerant the system has and when to stop adding. Without it, you are guessing, and guessing is how compressors get destroyed. The difference between a proper recharge and a blown system is about $15 worth of gauge. One thing that catches Toyota owners off guard is when the compressor will not engage at all. The air conditioning is on, the fan is blowing, but the air is room temperature, and the compressor pulley at the front of the engine is just sitting there doing nothing. Most people assume the compressor is dead. Shops love this moment because a compressor replacement on a Toyota can cost $600 to $1,200 in parts and labor. But in the majority of cases, the compressor is perfectly healthy. Toyota builds a low-pressure cutoff switch into every air conditioning system specifically to prevent the compressor from running when refrigerant is too low. It is a protection feature. The computer shuts down the compressor to prevent metal-on-metal contact inside the housing, which would destroy the unit in seconds. Once enough refrigerant is added to bring the low side pressure above the minimum threshold, the electromagnetic clutch clicks on, and the compressor spins right up like nothing was ever wrong. That click is the sound of a working compressor that was never broken, just protected by Toyota's own engineering. Shops that recommend replacement without first checking the charge are either lazy, dishonest, or both. If you made it this far, consider liking this video, giving it a thumbs up, and subscribing to my channel. This helps me bring you more honest car advice. The pressure readings tell the real story of what is happening inside the system. On R134A Toyotas, the low side pressure should sit between 25 and 45 psi, depending on the ambient temperature outside. Most recharge kits include a temperature reference chart right on the gauge face that shows exactly where the needle should land based on current weather conditions. Readings below 25 psi on a warm day confirm the system is low. Readings that bounce erratically or spike high can indicate a blocked expansion valve or a failing compressor, and those are real problems that do require professional diagnosis. But a steady low reading on an otherwise smooth-running system almost always means the fix is simple refrigerant replacement. The important thing is knowing when to stop. Toyota specifies exact refrigerant capacities for every model down to the ounce, and exceeding that amount causes real damage. An overcharged system creates dangerously high pressures on the high side that can blow seals, crack condenser tubes, and burn out the compressor clutch. The green zone on the gauge exists for a reason. Once the needle is there and the vents are blowing cold, that is the finish line. More refrigerant does not mean colder air, it means broken parts. After any recharge, temperature verification is what separates a real fix from a guess. An infrared thermometer, or even a basic kitchen thermometer held at the center dash vent, tells the truth. On a properly charged Toyota air conditioning system at idle, with the windows up and recirculation on, vent temperatures should land between 35 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit when the outside air is around 85 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the performance envelope. Toyota engineers designed these systems to hit. If temperatures are still reading 50 degrees or above after a proper recharge, the problem usually is not the refrigerant. It is the cabin air filter. That filter sits behind the glove box on most Toyotas, and its job is to clean the air before it passes over the evaporator. When it is clogged with dust, pollen, leaves, and debris, airflow drops dramatically. The evaporator gets cold, but the air cannot move through it fast enough to cool the cabin. Replacing that filter costs $10 to $15 and takes 2 minutes, yet I have seen it drop vent temperatures by another 5 to 8 degrees on cars that were already recharged. I have pulled cabin filters out of Toyotas that looked like they were insulating an attic, completely packed solid. The owners had no idea the filter existed, let alone that it needed regular replacement. Most Toyota manuals recommend swapping it every 15,000 to 20,000 miles, but in dusty or high pollen regions, every 10,000 miles makes more sense. It is the cheapest cooling upgrade available on any Toyota, and it takes less time than making a cup of coffee. Combined with a proper refrigerant charge, A fresh cabin filter is the reason some high-mileage Toyotas blow colder air than brand new ones on the dealer lot. Now, let us talk about the mistakes that turn a simple, cheap air conditioning fix into a catastrophic system failure. The first and worst mistake is using a recharge kit that contains leak sealer. Some cans advertise built-in stop leak additives as a bonus feature. They are anything but. Those sealant chemicals circulate through the entire air conditioning system and coat the inside of the expansion valve, the evaporator passages, and the compressor's internal reed valves. The particles designed to plug leaks do not discriminate between a leak and a critical passageway. Toyota dealerships and independent shops routinely refuse to service air conditioning systems that have had sealer run through them because the chemicals contaminate their recovery equipment and destroy expensive machines. What was supposed to save $20 in leak repair turns into a full system replacement costing $1,500 or more because every component is now internally contaminated. The only additives worth putting into an air conditioning system are refrigerant and ultraviolet dye. The dye circulates harmlessly and glows bright green under a black light wherever refrigerant is escaping. That is useful diagnostic information. Sealant is a system killer disguised as a convenience. The second major mistake is ignoring what happens after the recharge. If the system cools down perfectly but starts blowing warm again within a few days or weeks, that is not normal permeation. That is an active leak, and continuing to add refrigerant without finding the source is like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. The most common leak points on Toyotas are the Schrader valve cores inside the service ports, the O-rings at hose connections on the condenser and evaporator lines, and the compressor shaft seal. A Schrader valve replacement costs less than $5. An O-ring at a hose fitting might run $30 to $60 at a shop. But a compressor that has been run dry 3 or 4 times because nobody bothered to find a $5 leak is a $1,200 replacement that was completely preventable. Every cycle of losing refrigerant and recharging starves the compressor of PAG oil a little more, creating internal scoring that sends metal shavings through the entire system. Those shavings clog the expansion valve and condenser, and suddenly the entire air conditioning circuit needs replacement instead of a single cheap part. That oil starvation issue deserves its own attention because it is one of the least understood causes of total AC failure. Refrigerant carries a small amount of PAG oil through the system to keep the compressor lubricated internally. Every time refrigerant escapes over months and years, oil goes with it. By the time an owner notices weak cooling and adds refrigerant, the oil level inside the system may already be critically low. The compressor spins up with fresh refrigerant but runs dry internally, and the damage happens silently. Quality recharge kits include a small amount of PAG oil pre-mixed in the can, which helps. But systems that were severely low often need an additional ounce of the correct PAG viscosity added separately. Toyota specifies different oil grades depending on the compressor model, and using the wrong one reduces protection almost as badly as using none at all. This is one area where checking the service manual or the specification label under the hood genuinely matters. A $7 bottle of the right oil prevents thousands in compressor and contamination damage. The fourth mistake that catches Toyota owners off guard is never inspecting the condenser before recharging. The condenser sits directly behind the front grille, fully exposed to rocks, road debris, insects, and minor parking lot impacts. Over years of driving, small stones can puncture the thin aluminum fins and tubes, creating slow leaks that do not leave visible puddles or make any sound. Before spending money on refrigerant, a quick visual inspection through the grille with a flashlight can reveal bent fins, dark oily stains, or obvious impact marks. If the condenser is physically damaged, no amount of recharging will hold. The refrigerant escapes within days, and the money is wasted. A condenser replacement on most Toyotas runs $300 to $600 at an independent shop, far less than the $1,200 to $1,800 a dealership typically quotes. But catching that damage before dumping 3 cans of refrigerant into a system that cannot hold pressure saves weeks of frustration and hundreds of dollars chasing a problem that was sitting in plain sight behind the grill the entire time. Let me put the real numbers together on what this saves you. A shop recharge costs $150 to $250. A compressor replacement runs $600 to $1,200. A condenser replacement adds $400 to $800. An evaporator replacement, because it requires removing the entire dashboard assembly, can exceed $1,500. On most Toyotas under 150,000 miles with no prior AC work, none of those parts have failed. The system is simply low on refrigerant from years of normal permeation. A $20 can of R134A and a $12 cabin air filter brought a 2014 Camry with 97,000 miles from 62 degrees Fahrenheit at the vents down to 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a 24-degree Fahrenheit improvement for less than $30. The owner of that car was 7 days away from approving a $900 compressor replacement at a dealership. The compressor was never the problem. 6 months later, that same Camry is still blowing ice cold on all original AC components. No parts replaced, no major labor. Just refrigerant and a filter doing exactly what Toyota's engineers intended. Toyota AC systems are built to last the life of the vehicle. The compressors are over-engineered, the condensers are tucked behind protective grille structures, and the evaporators are sealed inside the dashboard, where they almost never fail. What actually kills these systems is years of running low on refrigerant without knowing it. Cabin filters that have not been touched since the car was new, and small leaks that get ignored until the compressor starves and self-destructs. A 5-minute check at the start of every summer and a $20 recharge when the cooling starts to fade are all it takes to keep any Toyota blowing Arctic air for 200,000 miles and beyond. The drivers who understand this never end up sitting in a service waiting room staring at a 4-figure repair estimate. They are the ones driving past with the fan turned down because the cabin is already too cold. And the best part is that none of this requires mechanical experience, specialty tools, or a weekend in the garage. It requires $20, 30 minutes, and the knowledge that your Toyota's AC was never broken in the first place. It was just waiting for someone to understand how it actually works. If you are enjoying this video, consider watching this next video where I share more ways to save thousands on Toyota repairs that most owners never learn about.